Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari signs the country's 2016 budget into law. And militants attack Chevron platform in Nigeria's Niger Delta region. Plus, UK's Barclays Bank raises £603 million, selling 12.2% stake of Barclays Africa. Good afternoon. Let's get the show started. Nigeria President a few minutes ago signed the 2016 budget into law. Today's event is coming after the National Assembly submitted a clean copy of the appropriations to the President. The government announced yesterday that it had mapped out 34 strategic priority programs and projects it intends to achieve with the 2016 budget. These include a capital spend minimum of 30% every year, an appropriate and predictable exchange rate regime by the end of this year, increased low-interest lending rate of 9% within the economy, self-sufficiency in tomato paste production in 2016, and rice production by the year 2018, and to increase local production of maize, soybeans, poultry, and livestock, and to stop their imports. Mr. President had withheld assent after some alterations were noticed in the document. Let's get to the broader market. Friday, the final trading day in the week. The Shanghai Composite fell 2.8%, hit by falling shares in Chinese coal and steel companies. We'll talk about the steel stories later on. The fall in mainland shares hit Hong Kong's market. The Hang Seng Index fell 1.7%, the fifth consecutive session of losses. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 Index down 0.3% following a three-day national holiday. In Australia, shares recovered from early losses. The S&P ASX 200 closed 0.25% higher at 5,292. Markets in South Korea are short for a long weekend, and trading there will resume on Monday. Okay, quite a lot to talk about the European markets today. Where is the direction this market's looking at? The steelmakers are in the news today, so let's cross over to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, where Conrad Busin, who's been with us since the start of the week, is wrapping up the trading week for us from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. DWTV financial correspondent for Channels Television. Conrad, good afternoon. Let's get the conversation going from Europe, where the markets are today, and looking at the German DAX index. Give us where the market is heading, especially the German DAX.
Something important has been happening during the last few minutes. A couple of minutes ago, the American non-farm payrolls came out, an update from the US labor market. The unemployment rate remains at 5.0%. That's the good news. The bad news is that in America during the month of April, only 160,000 new jobs were created. That's way lower than what economists anticipated. Also, the labor force participation rate has gone down a little bit. Less Americans are taking part in the labor market. Wages have increased a little bit, but quite obviously, at least for the moment, people on the stock market are not happy about the news. That might change in the course of this day, because what does this very low and negative news from the labor market in the United States mean in terms of interest rates? What will the Federal Reserve governors do during the month of June? Given this rather weak data from the labor market in the United States, it's quite probable that the Federal Reserve governors will put another interest rate hike on hold, which would be good news for the stock market normally. At the moment, it's having a negative impact on the market. The DAX is down around 1% compared to last night, and that means it is trading nearly 3% lower than last Friday and around about 6% lower than 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I just saw a blip there 1 or 2 seconds ago as you're talking about that. Perhaps that will take the DAX a little bit higher, perhaps a little before the closing time European markets today. But let's talk about the steelmakers a little. Looks like the trade war between the American and the European steelmakers, complaining about unfair competition from the steelmakers in China, had been going. There was a meeting held recently in Europe. Now, ArcelorMittal, the world's largest steelmaker, reported earnings that's about $400 million off track. Talk to us about this, Conrad.
Well, today we got a feeling what this as you call it, that trade war between America and Europe, and on the one hand side, and China on the other side, what consequences this has. In the earnings reports of the steelmakers, we did get ArcelorMittal's earnings report today, the results for the first quarter, and another big loss. 4 years in a row, ArcelorMittal has made losses now, and that's even despite the fact that this large European steelmaker, or that large worldwide steelmaker, closed down 4 of its 25 European steel production sites. That underlines how difficult the situation is for the steelmakers here. And of course, generally, if you talk to people on the markets, everyone is, in favor of free trade. But in this case, it really looks like the Chinese offer their products on the world markets at prices that are too low to really even bring any earnings to the Chinese. They are definitely dumping prices. And what's more, everybody knows that the Chinese, they do not have environmental rules to follow. They do not have large pensions to pay to their retired workers, like many and most of the European steelmakers are. So it's obviously something that the competitivity policymakers have to do something about.
Yes, sticking with the steel story, look at Tata in the UK. Looks like the Cameron's administration will be weighing in support of the steel maker. Do you think there is an unfair state support here for Tata? What do you think the market's thinking about this Tata Steel story?
Well, I already indicated that even though people at the exchange here are really targeting profit first, profit rules at the stock exchange, but there's a lot of understanding for measures to support the steel makers. In the case of the Tata Steel factories, where the government in London is ready to invest 25% or buy 25% of the stake of these factories, people I talked to said, well, that looks a lot like treating the symptoms and not the causes. It would have been much more intelligent for the government in London, together with its European counterparts and on a European level, to do something about unfair competition beforehand. Then maybe, or then quite surely, they wouldn't be in the situation now to find a solution where, as you said, the government invests directly into a steel plant, and many people here have doubts whether this is really the perfect solution.
Very interesting development there. And of course, Conrad, I'm sure as you get back to your desk, you can see the German DAX heading slightly north, a bit of a gentle blip to the north there, just over your shoulder. Let's see how things paces out to the rest of the day, a couple of hours to the end of the European trading day. Conrad, do enjoy your weekend. We'll get together very soon, sometime, to look at the markets once again. Conrad Brewson, DWTV financial correspondent for Channels Television at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Let's stick with the London story, where the UK's Barclays Bank has raised £603 million by selling 12.2% stake in Barclays Africa Group. That's the first crucial step in the plan to curb risk and refocus Barclays Bank core markets in Britain and the US. Barclays is selling down its 62% stake in the South African lender as part of a plan to simplify the bank structure, shore up its balance sheet and generate higher shareholder returns. Following the completion of the placing, the British lender will continue to hold 424.7 million ordinary shares. That's about 50.1% holding in Barclays Africa, worth around £4.4 billion, or dollars rather, based on the placement price.